Okay, here's the report Field Manager generates. Up here, you just select what modules you want included. These two checkboxes allow you to stop it from populating these last two columns. There's a lot of queries involved here, and if you don't need this information, why run them? So let's look at some of the issues that we can get from this report. We look at this first field, it's in calls. It has 121 invalid entries, so that's something we can clean up. Not really an optimization, but still necessary. We can see that the max length of the options is 37, so there's the options. So the longest one is 37 characters, but it's an enum. It's a varchar 100, which is what Sugar defaults to. So since we already know that the longest one that will go in there is 37, we could turn this down to a varchar 50, save ourselves 50 characters, and still store all the data we want. Now, seeing that there's only 2 custom fields and calls that have any kind of issues to call out, more than likely that will be not enough of a change for you to see, but it'll get it off this report, and it's one less thing to look at. This field is got a max of 32. It's got no invalid entries. It's a varchar 100 again, just like the other ones. Here you can see that there are 66,000 records. Only 2 of them are filled. The rest are blank. We only have 3 distinct values on this one. So that seems wrong. We have 44,000 blanks, 21,000 nulls, and 2 times somebody picked IT Expo 2015. To my eye, this field seems kind of useless. It was created in 2016 and it's only got 2 entries on it. I'm going to start asking around to see if I can remove it. It's not on any reports, so it doesn't appear that anybody cares about it. So it's one less field. I'd like to get rid of it. So I'll make a note that I want to delete that field next time I update the database. Meetings, much the same thing. You've got max data 23, you've got a varchar 100. You could knock that down to a varchar 25 or 50. Personally, I'd go down to a 25, but a varchar 50 would be more than adequate. But again, since there's only 1 field there, you're not going to see any real appreciable difference. But it'll get it off this report, and it'll be one less thing to look at later on. So, moving down to tasks, we have our first formula field. So we've got a field in a database. It's a varchar 255. It's part of reports and it's part of workflow. It's got a process author definition and a business rule. But every time it's displayed, it's going to issue a REST call to get the status of the related case. Maybe if these reports and workflows are necessary, then we could leave it in the database, knock it down to whatever is necessary to hold a status from a case, which is probably maybe 25, 30, 50, and fill it in the logic hook and get rid of this formula. And that'll be one less REST call that has to be done during display, and one less REST call is one less REST call in my book. The rest of these follow the same format. Max 22. It's got 583 invalid entries, which we could find. Let's look for something more interesting. You got the same thing, varchar 255, but the max that's in there is 50, so we could knock that down to a varchar 100. No problem at all. Maybe a varchar 75. Hell, maybe a varchar 50, but that's a little dangerous in my book. So I'd probably go to 100 on that one. This one is carrying the case number, which is very mysterious. Okay, that's status up there. So this is carrying the related case number. More than likely, I already converted this to a logic hook, but I didn't fix everything because all of its data is numeric, of course, because it's a case number. from the related case, but it's in a varchar. This should be in an int. So that would take a 255 byte varchar when you're sorting or, grouping by case number, which I know they sort by case number. And it would knock it down to a 4-byte int, which would be a whole lot more efficient. So I'll definitely look into doing that. That one only shows on the list view too. That's usually a red flag for me that maybe something, isn't as necessary as it seems to be. In this case, it is, because they list the case number on the list view of tasks. But again, that should be an int, not a varchar. And this report makes that easy to see. Here we have a checkbox, a bool. But this checkbox is never checked because it's all 0. It's not on any views, but it's part of several reports. I happen to know we use this as a trigger for workflow. So it's set to checked, then a workflow sees that it's checked and it runs the workflow, and then the workflow checks it, unchecks it. So of course all the values are 0. That's perfectly normal for that field. Alright, with that one, this field is exactly the same thing. It's a trigger for workflow, so of course it's all 0. But for some reason we're showing it on the record view, and it should not be on the record view. It's just a trigger. So this report showed me that I've got a field on the record view that I shouldn't have. So I'll definitely make a note to get it off the record view. Clean that up. So here we have a varchar that's not an enum, because it would say enum there if it was a drop down, but it's only got 5 distinct values. It has new customer, so this looks like it's data copied from the related order, and that's probably a drop down. So it's 30, I'd probably knock it down to a varchar 50 and be done with it. It's on reports and all over the place, so I'm definitely not going to get rid of it. But I could optimize it and drop it down to a 50 and save quite a bit of space. If you dropped all of these, look how many there are in tasks. There are just dozens of them at least. Here's an enum with 1 distinct value, US. So, I'll have to see. That seems unlikely, but we'll look into that one too. But that's the kind of thing the report is good at, is that I would have never known that, that's always set to US, even though it's got US, Canada, and other. So maybe that's not as useful as it could be. Here you see a field with a huge formula to it. Not really a problem, but we're not using it. It's no reports, no views, so it's something that's going to run every time you bring a contact onto the screen. If you're not going to show it, why have it? So I'd probably vote to look into getting rid of this field. Here's another one. The field is in the database, but it doesn't exist in SugarCRM. More than likely what happened is that field was added and then dropped, and then the database was probably restored, so that field got re-added, but of course it didn't get re-added to Sugar, so now it's out there. I could just plain drop that one from MySQL, no repercussions at all, because it's not part of Sugar. Here we have a bunch of empty fields. Field contains no data whatsoever. Here's an empty field here. So if it's empty and it was created in 2015, maybe it needs to go. I know up here we've got a bunch of empty fields in tasks, but they were just created at the end of January. So maybe it's completely acceptable that they're not filled with anything yet. Maybe they're from the current sprint or from the previous sprint, and we haven't actually released those to the user base yet. So those I would have no problem with. They're new enough that I'm not going to worry that they're blank. These guys down here are from 2015 and they're blank. and they're not on any views, they're not in any reports, nothing. So they're definitely candidates to leave. All these varchar 255s definitely need to look into shortening those as much as possible. I think most of this, you're going to see a lot of int 255s, but that's not really a problem. Ints are always 4 bytes no matter how big this number is. This number is simply how many digits will be displayed of that 4-byte number, and that 4-byte number holds, I forget exactly how big it is, but it's in the billions maybe. It's not going to be 255 characters long. There's no doubt about that. You'll never get a number that's 255 characters long, but there's no performance hit for that. So you can leave those 255 no problem. I didn't see any text type. Here we go. So here's a text field. It's got nothing in it. It is blank. There's 31,000 records and tasks, and they're all blank. So that would be something I could easily get rid of. I think that, let's look for another one here. That one's blank. Here we go. Here's one that's full. It's got almost 10,000 entries, but the biggest entry is 119 characters. So that seems like a horrible use of a text area. Text areas exist outside the table space, or at least, well, this one may not, since it's only got 119 characters in it. I'd have to seriously think about that. I'm not positive that changing this to a varchar would be any bonus to performance, but if this was like 1100, then it might be better to just set up a varchar 1200 and just move it. I'm not even sure if varchar 1200 would stay in the table. I don't know. But I would research that one. Primary address street, there's really no, I can't think of any reason it needs to be a text area. It could be a varchar very easily. And if we put a varchar, hell, if we even put a varchar 255 in there for that, that would be fine in my book. It would be better than having a text area. So that's how it's used, and if you can think of something I could add to it, that would be fantastic. Let me know.